Okay, I am pleased to have with me as a guest on the John Riley Project, mayoral candidate Emily Johnson. Emily, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Okay, I'm really excited to have you here on the podcast, and I really want to get to know more about your candidacy. And I know you've been out there on the streets working. I've been seeing your signs around town. So just tell me, how's the campaign going so far?
It's going really well. I'm getting a mostly positive reception.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's a little bit of issue regarding my age, but also a lot of people see it as a good thing because it's kind of a fresh look on Poway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my signs say a new perspective on Poway.
Right,
so.
right, yeah.
But you know, it's been really cool to see and hear what my neighbors and fellow community members think, and especially what they think about me running. I hear a lot of, it's mostly people who are just excited to see somebody who looks different running. So.
Yeah, right. Because, I mean, you look at, for the most part, our city council people have been, you know, gray-haired guys like me, right? You know, so it's great to see a young person. It's great to see a female candidate. So I think it's fantastic. I think it's exciting for our city.
Thank you. Yeah. I kind of hit this point when I was a senior in high school where I realized that I can't just wait around for somebody to represent me. Like, I'm going to have to represent myself and people who stand where I stand.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and I remember you said that at one of the candidate forums where you vowed to run for Poway mayor at some point in your future, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, boom, boom, here you are.
Yeah.
You know, so I think what you're doing is awesome. And I think it's, you know, it's kind of what democracy is all about, right?
Right.
It's about people stepping up and getting involved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The frustrating thing is a lot of people in my generation. You know, you see really low voter turnout rates with people who are 25 and younger.
Right.
And it's hard because the decisions that are being made, we're going to have to live with.
Right.
You know, people who are 70, 80 years old who are voting on things that will last a lifetime, they're not going to have to live with it for very long. Whereas people who are my age, we still have families to raise, we still have lives to live. Mm-hmm. And it's hard because people my age aren't getting out there and voting, and instead are just voicing kind of dissatisfaction with how things are going and not really doing anything to change it because there's almost this feeling of we can't change it.
Right.
So I think that's why it's so important that I am running, is because it kind of shows, yeah, I might be young, I might not be as old or I guess experienced as these other candidates, but I'm doing something.
Yeah.
And that's the important part.
Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing, you know, throughout the country, is that there's a lot more young people that are stepping up. And I think President Obama spoke a lot about that. You know, he not only said, you know, don't get angry, vote,
Yeah.
right? But then he also is encouraging young people to become active in the process. And it seems like you're following that line.
Yeah, I mean, we have to. If we want to see any sort of change in this country, and
Mm-hmm.
we have to start at the local level.
Right.
If we want to see change, the young people are going to have to make the change happen.
Right. You know, it's interesting when you see, like, people will do the studies of the demographics, and they'll show how many, like, you know, baby boomers there are and how many, I guess, millennials, and, you know, they break it up by age. Mm-hmm. And it's almost that if the young people, like between the ages of 18 and 34, would vote in mass, they could rule the world, right? Or
Yeah.
at least really control the agenda in
Yeah,
our
there's
nation.
a lot of us. There's a lot of us who just, I mean, don't vote. I have friends who aren't even registered to vote. And it's frustrating because as somebody who's active in politics, who believes that my vote counts,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to see people who just kind of lay on their backs and let change happen
Right.
without any sort of influence on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel that some of your peers, are they tuned in to a lot of national politics, state politics, or even local Poway politics, or are they just kind of more concerned with their life, and getting their career going or whatever?
I mean, specifically with my peers, so people who I had classes with in high school, I guess. I was on the AP route, so in all the advanced placement classes. So we were always kind of a little bit more, I guess, in tune with at least national government.
Right.
And in classes, we would have discussion about it, especially in AP US history, classes like that. We would constantly be talking about these issues. But I don't really think any of my peers pay attention to local government, mostly because a lot of us don't plan on staying in Poway, which is frustrating because this is a great place. It's a great place to raise a family, but that's just not what a lot of millennials are looking for anymore, And I kind of hope that by being involved in politics, I can at least make the young people who still live here realize that this is our home, even if it's not exactly New York City or LA.
Right.
It's still our home.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm sure, there are a lot of young people that have stayed in Poway even after they graduated from local high schools, right? There's also, it's amazing how many people have gone to Poway High, graduated, went on to college or whatever they did, they started their career, and then they came back and they raised their family here because they are just so deeply connected to the city.
Right. And this is a great place to have a family. This is, it's a beautiful community where it is very safe. There's some improvements that can be made, but for the most part, our schools are really good. Our parks are well taken care of. And it's just, it's not quite the suburbs. It's not quite a city. It's somewhere where you can have a family and you can kind of keep them protected, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's the city and the country,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a special place, Poway.
Exactly.
I moved here specifically. My wife and I moved here because we wanted to start our family. And we said, where are there good schools? Where is there a good, a safe community? And you look down the list, Poway, just check marks right down the list. So, it's a great place.
My parents moved us here for a really similar reason. We were living in Ocean Beach, and I think around the time, I have a twin, and I think around the time my twin and I were 4 or 5, my parents started looking to Poway for, a good place to kind of get us in schools because Ocean Beach doesn't have like a great school. And we came here, and they loved the schools. I went to Garden Road Elementary, and they loved the staff there, and people who taught me, my teachers, my counselors, I'm still very close with to this day.
Nice.
Yeah.
My children went to Garden Road Elementary as well.
Yeah, it's a good school.
It is. It's nice. It's a great community there. And, so you went to Garden Road, and did you go to Twin Peaks and then into Poway High?
Yes.
And you graduated in what year?
2016.
Okay. Well, then you graduated in the big election year.
Yes. Yeah. Which was stressful because, my graduating class, we were kind of just starting our adulthood. And here's this monumental adult decision that we were going to have to be a part of making.
Right.
And so it felt a little bit like we were thrown out into the ocean and just sink or swim. But I think it really got a lot of us realizing that we have to be involved.
Right.
Especially after the results came out.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, I mean, I remember for me, the first election I voted in was 1984, right? And so the same thing, it's this big national election. You're sort of thrown out there. Some of your political opinions are not completely formed.
Right.
You know certain things, you believe certain things. But I remember when I was that age, things I believed in then, I maybe believe a little bit differently now.
Yeah. And I think that's true for everyone. As you grow, your politics will change.
Right.
And that's just part of the natural progression of life.
Right. It is. Yeah, because, when you're young and single, and then later on when you're, starting a family, your different values, different perspectives kind of creep in.
Yeah.
But I think it's wonderful that you're running. almost like as a sort of a symbol to the youth of Poway. It's like, hey, it's one of us, right? And an inspiration for young people to become more politically active and to engage in the process.
I hope.
Yeah.
One can only hope. I do see a little bit of an effect in just my circle of friends, I suppose, where, they're starting to realize that there's influence that can be had, even if we're as young as we are. I have friends who are now very loyal members of whatever their party is and who go out and campaign and canvass and make phone calls for these candidates. And I think that's amazing. And to be able to say that I had a little bit of influence on that, it just warms my heart. It makes me feel like what I'm doing, whether I win or lose, has had an impact.
Oh, yeah. There's no question. I mean, you will have an impact no matter what happens. So I think it's fantastic. So when you're out there and you're talking, let's just say amongst your peer group, okay, whether they're your friends or maybe people you don't know, but maybe they're roughly in your age range. What are some of the things that they're concerned with, on a national level, but also at a local level?
Nationally, you see a lot of concern with equality, police brutality, acceptance, and general overall human rights.
Right.
On a local level, my peers are a little bit more concerned with like what's to do around here. Over the summer, the community pool was closed, and that's a lot of what people my age do here. And so that was frustrating for a lot of people. Traffic is a big issue for my peers, mostly because a lot of us go to school outside of Poway.
Right.
Whether it's Miramar or SDSU, a lot of us stay living in Poway and attending these colleges. And sometimes traffic is so bad that you're going to be late to class.
Well, it's a long haul down Poway Road from Garden Road to the 15.
Yeah.
I mean, how many stoplights is that?
Oh, so many. I have one classmate who lives right off the 15 entrance in Poway. And when she realized I live in Garden Road, she asked me, how long does it take you?
Yeah.
Because it's long. You get stopped at every stoplight, and that's not even accounting for traffic or construction. So it's a bit of a drive.
I remember when we first moved here, I used to, my wife and I would joke about it, like how long a Poway Road was. It seemed like it went forever. And it seemed like we passed every fast food franchise known to man. And then we eventually got to our home. But now that I've lived here for so long, I don't even think about that.
Right.
I just go down Poway Road. It is what it is. And it doesn't seem long to me anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, I appreciate the fast food restaurants being everywhere, because then when I'm at least running late to class, I can at least pick something up to eat. But it's weird because it doesn't seem that long, and then you see other cities and you realize Poway Road's actually really long.
It is, yeah.
But
well, let's talk about Poway Road and the Poway Rd Corridor development plan. It's a big topic in this election. What are your thoughts on that?
I really think we need to step back from development, at least for the time being. People in Poway don't seem that thrilled to have so much construction going on, to have any sort of change going on, which is understandable because Poway has sort of a vibe to it that people don't want to see changed, especially long-term residents. And I think if we are going to be focusing on construction along Poway Road, it should be more towards getting buildings up to code and instead of changing or adding or destroying things.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, I think once we see this new, that outpost development that's being built, was it next to Five Guys?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. That's going to be an interesting project because, they're doing with a two levels of underground parking, and they're going to have this, was it like a food court or something? And
yeah.
So I think a lot of people are curious to see how that turns out. And is that going to be symbolic of what we're going to see moving forward? Is it going to be something that's going to scare people about what could possibly be in the future? I know.
A lot of people see it as kind of Poway is turning into another North Park or Mira Mesa by adding the underground parking structure.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be providing parking that is sound to keeping more land, I guess, not involved. But I do think it's important that we maintain that city and the country charm instead of turning into another industrialized area.
Right. Well, I guess maybe if we're going to maintain the city and the country, maybe underground parking is preferable to a 2-story parking garage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the redevelopment of Poway Road is interesting because there's a lot of businesses that have been there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the thrift stores, the bowling alley. They actually took out a couple of businesses to build that outpost there. Do you go to the bowling alley much?
I used to go more. I still go occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really bad at bowling, so if I go, it has to be a lot of friends,
Right.
who won't make fun of me.
Right.
But it was a part of my childhood. Thrift shopping is a lot of how I hang out with friends. It's very trendy these days.
Yeah, it's always fun to do.
Yeah, and you never know what you're gonna find, and so it almost like breaks my heart to hear that those places that I kind of grew up going to might not be there in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard because, the bowling alley is where a lot of my friends had birthday parties. It's where a lot of my friends' younger siblings still have birthday parties. It's one of the only things, entertainment-wise, that Poway has to offer. And so if those places were lost, I don't really know what we could do to bring in more local money spending, I suppose.
Well, part of the Poway Rd Corridor plan is they say it's mixed use, right? Mm-hmm. So there's going to be residential, like a bunch of apartments and condos, but there's supposed to also be businesses. Mm-hmm. So the question is what are those businesses? Are they restaurants, or are they places that are similar to a bowling alley in terms of being an entertainment destination?
I definitely think it would be important if this corridor plan goes through, and it looks like, that if we are bringing in businesses, whatever they may be, that they maintain local businesses instead of bringing in more McDonald's and Jack in the Boxes.
And Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, as great as those chains are, I think part of Poway's charm is like when you go to Old Poway Park and you see all these little businesses that you would never see anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And so I think that if we brought in more of those, that maybe Poway residents wouldn't be so, I guess, upset about the level of construction.
Yeah, I think the gist of what I'm getting from the people that are planning Poway Road development is that they do want to embrace this notion of, keeping Poway's character.
Yeah.
And one of the great things I think with this outpost project is that the people that are putting in a lot of the restaurant or the food court, or whatever, it's the same people that are behind the Urge restaurant chain. And I know it's not really even a chain. It's like I have a couple of them. Yeah. But I've gone to the one in RB. Have you ever been there?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So they have really good food there, and they got, obviously it's a kind of a beer pub. They got a huge selection there. So it's a neat place. Yeah. And it's, it's a lot of craftsmanship, right, to it. Yeah. So hopefully, we'll see some of that in the Poway Road project.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would be happy if we saw that.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're all curious to see what ends up happening. I think a lot of it's just going to depend on what the property owners decide to do and the guidance the city council offers. So if you're elected, you could play a role in that.
Yeah, and I'm excited to be able to even have the opportunity to potentially play a role in it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's just hopscotch around town. I mean, there's a number of other issues that a lot of other candidates have talked about. How about the city parks? You said you think they're good parks. What are your thoughts in general about certain parks or the upkeep or some of your ideas on parks?
I grew up going to Garden Road Park like every day after school. And it has a big part of my childhood in it. It has a big part of my adulthood in it because, I still ride my bike through there or walk my dog through there. And I think it's a beautiful park. I think personally it's well maintained. Sometimes the benches could use replacement, but what park couldn't? It's outside. Things are going to get damaged. I think that if we modeled our parks to be more of a small playground and larger open fields, I think that would be great. Because I don't think Poway has a lot of really green areas left. We see a lot of either through the drought, we see a lot of it die, or we see a lot of it kind of be built over. Right. Like they talked for a long time to make the dog park in the community area. I think they were talking about asphalt or astroturf or something instead of the natural grass that they had. And thankfully, a lot of people were upset by that because we don't want our dogs playing on concrete or astroturf.
Right.
And so that didn't end up happening. I think that our playgrounds could probably use a little bit more maintenance almost. But I honestly think that most parks that at least I go to on a regular basis in the Poway area, I think they're beautiful, and I think that they're great parts of the community. I think we could stand to have more space for them. And, you know, the community involvement, you can't go to a park on a weekend without seeing either a barbecue or a bouncy house, and I think that's great. I think that's a lot to do with Poway's charm.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, obviously certain parks in town are more popular than others. I mean, you go to Old Poway Park on a Saturday or a Sunday, it's jam-packed.
Yeah.
But even at the Garden Road Park, I remember going there on a weekend, definitely birthday parties. You'd see piñatas hanging off of the tree.
All the time, yeah.
Sometimes people would be setting up temporary volleyball courts, you know, or playing, you know, touch football. So you see a lot of that there because, the Garden Road Park is interesting because it's so big, you know, and it's just this huge swath of grass. Star Ridge is a little bit like that, where there's just a ton of grass, but that's kind of tucked away, you know, on Carriage Road. A lot of people don't know about that park.
Yeah. I mean, I think the open space is more valuable almost than a playground because kids can run around, play tag, play catch, and, you know, it helps contribute to them eventually becoming healthy, active adults.
Yeah, exactly. Good. So you've been in Poway since you were about 4, right?
Yeah. So I originally lived a little further, closer to the 15, and I can't really remember much of where it was because I was 8.
You're so young.
Yeah. I was 8 when I moved into the house that I currently live in off Garden Road.
Okay.
And I love it here. I mean, it's definitely not. The young part of me wants to find somewhere with a little more hustle and bustle.
Yeah.
But I love Poway. It's always going to be home to me. And I do think that I will end up coming back here to raise my own family if I do ever walk away.
Well, if you're the mayor, you can't leave.
Obviously, yeah, there's that.
So good. So tell me a little more about what you're hearing from, let's just say, not just young people, but just everybody when you're talking to folks in Poway. What are some of the issues they bring to you?
Recently, it's been a lot about the senior center, which is understandably frustrating because it's not just a senior center. It provides a lot of buildings for the community to use. And so the concept of it being torn down to be rebuilt, a lot of people are concerned about, well, where are these groups going to meet? Where are these people going to go? And I think I addressed this at the forum where I'm not 100% sure what the answer to that is. I do think that it's going to require a lot more communication between the city and council.
Right.
I don't think there's enough of that communication. I think things are happening where citizens and taxpayers are like, wait, why are we doing this? What's happening? Who made this decision? And so, you know, you hear a lot of residents who are kind of frustrated on that note where they feel like decisions are being made on their behalf without anyone ever asking them or properly representing them.
Right. Yeah, sometimes it's difficult, you know, for the city to get the message out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, our Poway Chieftain's a great newspaper, but, you know, sometimes people get it, some people don't. You can get it online, you know, but the city tries to communicate. But people are busy, right? They got lives and you know, they got jobs and families, and sometimes they're just not tuned in.
Right. And when you see people who are involved, they tend to be retired or out of work for whatever reason. And so, because it's hard to maintain a level of political involvement and a job and raising your family and, you know, doing other things.
Yeah.
I think it could be made a lot easier if, like, there's a Facebook page, South Poway Votes. I think you're on it.
Yeah.
And I think that is a great way to get community involvement. I mean, you see there's tons of people who are constantly posting to that page, who are constantly, you know, helping their neighbors become more aware. Nextdoor, which is a website, is a great way to get messages out too. So I think instead of wondering how we can make people force time to attend council meetings and those kinds of things or read the newspaper. I think that if council were a little bit more involved on like social media, it would be a lot easier for people going through their day-to-day life to, oh, I have 5 minutes, let me check Facebook and see what the city's up to.
Right. Well, the city, they videotape all their meetings. But it's kind of like this podcast. Who has time to sit down through 2 hours,
Yeah.
You see some of our city council members are pretty active. I mean, the mayor is pretty active on social media. But some of the other city council members are not. The city itself does a little bit, right? I mean, they're not as active as some people. The South Poway Votes, Facebook group is really good. And even though Chris Cruz, who's the main administrator of that page, looks at things through a South Poway lens, still the discussion applies to everybody in Poway. And you see people from all parts of the city that engage and participate, and there's a really active dialogue. And with rare exception, it's all very civil, cordial, friendly, respectful, even if opposing views are being shared.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I mean, social media, a lot of people can get behind a screen and be rude for whatever reason. But I think when you remind people that we are part of a community where you're going to see your neighbor day to day, it kind of makes people maintain a level of politeness and respect.
Yeah, and it's not anonymous, right?
Right.
Okay, we don't have some clever handle.
Yeah.
And it's local. So you gotta stay in your lane, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's a really good group, and I know that there's. I don't know how many people are in that group. I think it's around 600 or 700, if I recall.
I was about to say a lot.
It's a lot, yeah.
A couple hundred at least.
Oh, well more than that.
Yeah.
In case, for any of the viewers or listeners, I encourage people to check that group out. And it's not, do you have to be invited or I think anyone can join, right?
I think you have to join and then be accepted.
Yeah.
So it's not an open group. I think it is a somewhat closed group. But I don't think Chris really doesn't let anybody join.
Right, but I think as long as you're a legitimate Poway person, then you're in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's a good one. She was just recently posting about water and sewer rates, which are an interesting topic, and there's been obviously a lot of discussion about the campaign, and some of the candidates like to kind of post some of their activities there.
Yeah. I don't use it as much as other candidates, I guess, just because I have my own candidacy Facebook page. So if I do post to South Poway Votes, it's more to direct people to my own page or to my website or my Instagram page.
Right.
So,
well, this is interesting is when you look at social media behavior by age group, right? And Facebook was the hip thing for young people, and it's shifted, right?
Yeah, it shifted more towards more photo sharing pages. Right. So Instagram, Snapchat, Snapchat not so much anymore. Musically, like there's a lot of more, I guess, interactive where you see the person who's making the post kind of thing.
Yeah, I know my kids are big on Instagram and Snapchat, and it seems like Instagram is when you just have that perfect photo.
Yeah.
Right? And then they apply all those filters to make it look just right.
Heavily edited.
Yeah. And then, but Snapchat is I never used it, but isn't that the one where you can say something and then it disappears, right?
So it disappears after 24 hours.
Yeah.
You have the option to save it to your own photo gallery, but it does go away after 24 hours. It's a really good way to kind of keep people up to date on like this is happening today. So if you see it on my Snapchat story, it's happening today. And if you don't see it, it's because it's over.
Right.
It's more of a, I guess, kind of a telephone game where you can send it to people so that they're aware of what's currently happening. And then Instagram is more for, here's what I did, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I understand the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you learn that as you get involved in each of these social media platforms, how they're used in different ways. And, think about it in these terms is that, we're talking about the city and, the issue of communicating with its citizens, about engaging young people to be more in the process. The question then becomes, is the city communicating on the social media platforms that young people use?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I haven't seen really any like Instagram activity by the city of Poway. There's some posts, I think, but I think that would really help bring in young people involvement. You see, like the San Diego Democratic Club has an Instagram page, and they post on their Instagram story every week, meet our candidates. And that ups youth involvement a ton, I would imagine.
Right.
And it's just because it's a matter of young people aren't looking at the newspaper or even news websites.
Right.
We're looking at social media.
Right.
You see Twitter is how a lot of people get their news these days, which is, I wouldn't say always a good thing.
Yeah.
Because social media isn't a news source, but it's what it is.
Yeah, for me personally, I'm a big Twitter person and I'm a big Facebook person.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to get a little more into Instagram. But I'm just noticing even amongst people my own age, Instagram's becoming more and more popular.
Yeah.
You know, and I haven't quite made that migration, but I love Twitter.
Yeah.
You know, Twitter's fun.
Yeah.
You know?
You have to be short to the point. You say what you need to say, and then you post it out there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of snark, you know, a lot of little zingers in there.
Yeah,
It's kind of...
It's because there's a matter, some level of anonymity.
Anonymity? Am I saying that right?
I think you are.
I'm mixing the M's and N's together.
Yeah, it's hard. But there is some level of that where there's a screen name. You don't have to post your face as your profile picture.
Yeah.
So people can be a little more snarky, sassy, whatever word you'd like to use for it.
Yeah.
Because not everyone's going to know who they are.
You know, it's funny. I follow certain national politicians that have been, old guys in D.C., right, that have embraced Twitter and are really good at it.
Yeah.
You know, like Ben Sass and Thomas Massey are two that I like.
Yeah.
And they're really good.
Well, because it's a great way to get people to not only know what you're doing, but to support what you're doing. You can get, the retweets and likes on things.
Yeah.
So it's a really good networking tool where you don't even have to leave your room.
Right. Yeah, and they make it fun, right? Yeah. You figure some, old guys actually kind of engaging and hip and trying to, have some personality.
Yeah.
Right? Because if they're able to have that personality, the message is more likely to penetrate.
Yeah.
Because
it makes you seem like a real person and not just a figurehead in Washington.
Exactly. See, this is all interesting for me because you as a young candidate, I mean, you get it.
Yeah.
Okay. People of my age, we kind of get it, all right? Okay, we're kind of coming along, but it's not like natively built into our DNA.
Yeah, I grew up in an age where I saw the birth of the smartphone, and I grew up, eventually I got a smartphone, and I grew up with social media, and it's had its ups, it's had its downs. You're when you're a kid, your parents teach you about internet predators and don't make friends on the internet, but you do, to some level, make friends on the internet.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of protecting yourself, knowing how to protect yourself. But for my candidacy, I had a Instagram page for my campaign before I had a website or a Facebook.
Right.
Because my goal was to touch young voters.
Yeah.
And I knew that's how I would do it.
Right. That's smart.
Thank you.
It's interesting. You go back, I'm going to roll the clock back a ways. Okay. And President Ronald Reagan was often, considered the great communicator, right? That was kind of one of his angles. And he was good at it. He knew how to take advantage of the news media or, media in general, what it was. We had like three television stations back then. Oh my God. But I think smart politicians are great communicators.
Yes.
Right? Because they've got to be able to share their message, connect with people, and start that dialogue. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. And I mean, social media is a great way to have politicians communicating because you can reach practically anyone in the world.
Right.
With just a single post. And so I think it's extremely important that any candidate, not just the young ones or the ones in DC, I think all candidates need to start being a little bit more involved on social media, whether it's through an intern who helps them or themselves, because it would increase young voter turnout. I personally think.
Yeah. You always wonder, you see, even like President Trump, you always wonder, is he really doing it? Or, does he have like a person? I think he does have a person. But even other candidates, you often wonder.
Yeah. Who's making those posts for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know who has a really, really good social media presence is Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
And he has been able to I mean, I can't imagine Bernie is pushing all the buttons, right? But he has built a team, he's built a strategy, and he has been able to successfully connect with people of all ages, of all demographics, and he's done it really well.
Yeah, and I mean, you see people who are my age around, who are going into college or just starting college, just starting adulthood. And Bernie was something that we had never seen before, really. He was very left of the center. He fought for universal education. And that was something that we were all passionate about. And he was very involved in social media. So we saw what he was believing in.
Right.
And we continue to see what he believes in, even as a senator. And so I think it's really impressive almost that he did manage to make a team together to be able to connect on so many levels with so many voters.
Right. Yeah, that was very savvy. I mean, regardless of what you think about his policies, he's an excellent communicator.
Yes.
And that's successful politicians are good at that. So let's talk about education. You're a student.
So I just finished my associate's degree in May.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I figured that this was a good break to run a campaign.
Oh, perfect.
Depending on the results, I'm either going to be mayor or going back to school to finish my bachelor's. I believe really strongly that we are paying too much to go to school. I paid $100 for a textbook for one class.
Yeah.
And I opened it twice.
Right.
And so that's almost a big hurt for me, is where I feel like I'm being taken advantage of by these older people who are on school boards or who, get the money from taxpayers, from students. And it's frustrating and it's almost discouraging because we can't get jobs unless we have higher degrees, and we can't get higher degrees because we don't have the money to go to school and get them. And it's
like a chicken and egg,
exactly.
right?
It's this endless cycle of I can't go to school because I don't have money. I don't have money because I don't have a job. I don't have a job because I didn't go to school.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I have a twin, I said earlier, and we made the decision when we were seniors in high school. Either one of us would go to a 4-year university or both of us would attend community college. And that was and it was a decision we made without our parents' knowledge. And it was because we didn't want to put so high of a financial burden on our parents. Of course, they always said, we'll figure it out. We'll make it work. We'll apply for loans. But nobody wants to start their adulthood in debt.
No.
And so, my sibling and I, we took it upon ourselves to make this decision. And we went to community college instead of a 4-year because it's too expensive. It's ridiculous. And it's not fair to disadvantage youth because there's no way of paying for it. Even with financial aid, it's hard.
Yeah.
So
it's very hard. I have 2 children in college.
Yeah.
Okay. So I get it.
Yeah.
And some colleges, that my children were considering, thank goodness they're not attending them. They were like $60,000 a year, for the whole package. And you're like, holy moly, that's $250,000 when they get out.
Yeah.
But to your other point about the textbooks, I remember when I was a student, it was the same deal, right? So you'd be given, you had to buy these books, and oh, by the way, your professor was the author.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you got to buy the book, so you're kind of lining his pocket, and then you use the book only a couple of times. Or you try to buy the book used, but then there's a new edition, and you can't use the old one, and those books cost a lot of money.
Yeah. Thankfully, Amazon does rentals. There's lots of programs where you can rent your textbooks now, but it's still not cheap.
No, it's not.
And it's ridiculous. It's almost like they're publishers who publish these textbooks. It's almost as if they're coming out with new editions just so old ones can become irrelevant. And it's not like they're adding any new information. I had a bio class, I think when I was a freshman in college, who my professor just told us, get the older edition. There's no new information, just the page numbers are different. And
well, that's refreshing.
Yeah.
It's honest.
She was the only professor I had, or one of the few, I guess, who discouraged us from buying the textbook. And she even showed us where we could look at it online illegally. Because it's impossible. I'm paying so ever much amount for just attending the class, and then I have to pay another amount for the textbooks, another amount for the lab book if I was in this bio class, and it's ridiculous. Nobody should have to pay this amount to go to school. It's pretty much required to get a good job now. So.
Right.
But
I think what you're doing, I mean, if you're trying to put together a strategy, right, to do it as inexpensively as you can, I think the path that you're taking is the best way to go, right?
Yeah.
So you do 2 years, get your AA. Is that what it is? Right, it's AA.
Yeah, it's an AA.
And then you're spending a fraction of what you would have spent as a freshman at USD or San Diego State. And you knock down all your general ed, right?
Yeah.
And so you put yourself in a good spot.
Yeah. And it's frustrating because there's almost a stigma against community college where it's not real college, quote unquote. And people almost don't take it as seriously even when they're attending it. And that's hard because, you can knock out your first 2 years at a 4-year paying half, if not less, of what you would have paid at state or.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know. It's a weird thing where I almost feel ashamed telling people I did attend community college.
Oh, you shouldn't be ashamed.
Yeah.
No, don't.
Well,
no.
there's this level of me where it's like I made the right decision financially so that my sibling and I could have the same opportunity. But also I have all these friends who are at 4 years who kind of look down.
That's the culture of Poway.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot of wealthy people in this community, and that aren't shy about spending whatever is necessary to put their child through a high-end, expensive school.
Yeah.
There's no shame in going to getting an associate's degree. Frankly, it's the smart way to do it.
Right.
I mean, because who wants to graduate with $100,000 in debt?
Oh.
No way.
No, thank you.
Yeah, no. I mean, you wouldn't be able to climb out of that until you're probably in your 30s.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have friends whose parents still haven't paid off their student debts. Yeah. I had teachers at Poway High who were still paying off their student debts. It's monumental that we start our lives like that. It's just there's this level of almost elitism in Poway where, we have South Poway, which is a little more disadvantaged, a little less expensive, a little less money. And then there's North Poway, which has more money, more ability to spend money on things. And whether that's a level of they earned this money, it came from family, they have a good paying job, it doesn't matter because there is this almost rift in the community where South Poway votes is a great example of how the fact that there's different politics in South Poway versus North Poway.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's almost hard to be able to touch both members of those communities because South Poway people want, lower taxes, they want more affordable housing, and then North Poway residents aren't looking to increase housing density.
Right.
And it's hard to be able to balance what both of those groups want.
Okay, well, I'll assure you that the North Poway people also want lower taxes, right?
I believe that, yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone wants higher taxes.
Right, exactly. But you're right. I mean, the communities in different parts of Poway, they have different needs. There's different demographics. And I think that's one of the great things about the city and this districting, right?
Yeah.
Is that now the representatives, we're kind of in a transition process, but we're going to get to a point where, there's going to be a South Poway representative, right?
Yeah. I do think the districts could have been done a little differently. That maybe would have been better for South Poway residents. Having one representative who only encompasses South Poway is, I think, a little unfair due to the fact that there's 5 council members. So I think at least 2 of them should be South Poway residents. But, it's our first time at districting. And I think that as time goes on, things will change to make it a little bit of a better system.
Well, I think they're going to redraw the lines after the 2020 census.
Yeah.
So I think 2021, they'll change the lines. And then the 2022 election will be the first one with the new lines.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just going to be something that time will show if it was the right decision or not.
Right.
And I mean, I think, though, that the districts, in theory, are a great way to give all residents an opportunity to have their voices.
Right.
Because you see people in South Poway are a little bit more diverse.
Yeah.
And you don't really see people on council looking like us who live in South Poway. You know, we have a lot of people of color who live in South Poway. There's a lot of homeless people in South Poway who aren't being even looked at. You know, there's almost this level of, if we ignore them, they might go away. And that's hard because I have classmates who are homeless, who have been homeless since graduation.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, and there's nobody doing anything to help them. We don't have a homeless center. We don't have a job center where they could start their lives again. It's almost as if they're stuck until they can get out of Poway.
You don't mind me asking, people you know that you went to school with that are roughly your age that are homeless, I mean, where do they go?
Parks, the plaza in Poway. A lot of people hang out in the creek behind there.
Oh, yeah, the Creekside Plaza, where the theaters are. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because there's nowhere for them to go. You know, maybe they can try couch surfing for a little bit, but eventually they're going to be put out on the streets again, or they're going to have to find a new home, and it's hard. Mm-hmm. People my age, we can't afford to live here. And it's almost as if they have to save up their money for a bus ticket to get into San Diego where they can get to a homeless shelter. Because there's nothing in Poway. There's nobody even looking at them.
Right.
So.
You know, when, one of your competitors, Yuri Bolin, was here, and we spoke a little bit about the homeless. And he knows a number of them, right? He's gotten to know them on a first-name basis. And, there's some of them I know that I've seen frequently over the years, on Poway Road. So I always just wonder, how their lives are. I know it's a struggle. I know it's difficult, but how do they go on day to day?
Yeah. Some people are homeless by choice. Some people just decide to up and be done with however they were living and just start fresh homeless. But through the people that I know, their day to day is just trying to find somewhere clean to either wash their face or wash their hands or whatever, trying to find a meal, trying to put together enough money to afford basic necessities.
Right.
And some of them even have jobs, and they just can't, their jobs are just enough to pay for those necessities. It's not enough to pay for a home. So this speaks to the whole sort of housing crisis, right? Yeah. Which is not just Poway, but it's San Diego, it's statewide, right? Yeah. There's not enough housing. Yeah.
And that's one of the things I wonder about with the Poway Road plan. If they're going to build more apartments, now I don't expect the brand new apartments to be cheap.
Yeah.
But would it create enough of a shuffle where some people might want to upgrade or, go sideways migration, and it might open up some more of the lower priced rentals in town? I don't know.
That's what I would hope would happen.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that if we are building more residential buildings, that we're taking into consideration that we have this group that hasn't been looked at in a while, and whether that is making these apartments have a certain section of them that is lower income, or just hoping that the shuffle will allow for people to move into cheaper residencies.
Right.
Like you were saying, I think that's really just up to what's going to happen in the next couple of years. It is really going to depend on council and what they see as important. If I'm elected, it's going to be one of my first concerns is getting this disadvantaged group off the streets. Mm-hmm. Because as a city that prides itself on being such a community and homey and city in the country, we shouldn't have such a huge homeless population like the rest of San Diego has. Mm-hmm. Homeless people are our neighbors too. So I think that's something that is very concerning to me as a candidate and as a resident. We shouldn't be letting other residents live like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you there. You can look at it from a number of different perspectives too. We're talking about from a housing perspective, and then in the city we do have low income housing where you have to have income below a certain number to qualify. But then the question is there going to be more housing that's affordable, mm-hmm. As opposed to affordable housing.
Yeah.
Right. But the other part of this is that, the unemployment rate is so low, and that some businesses are desperate for workers. And so I've often wondered is if there is a homeless person who's down on their luck, is some unfortunate things have happened. Maybe they made a couple of bad decisions and they've got themselves into a pickle, right? Mm-hmm. Is there a way that they can be rehabilitated, and then there might be that opportunity to get those entry-level jobs where businesses are so hungry for talent?
And you see those in cities like North Park and downtown San Diego, where they have like job centers, and those provide vocational training. They give somewhat of business attire for the people to wear on their interviews. They help with resumes. They print resumes because people don't always have access to a printer or a computer.
Right.
I think Poway really needs to think about having a center like that, because even if we aren't explicitly providing housing for these homeless people, we need to provide something so that they have the opportunity to get back on their feet, because it's a downward spiral. Once you're out on the streets, it's very hard to make that decision of, do I eat or do I save up for a house? And so if we gave them the opportunity, if we gave them some job training or printed out their resume, helped them get cleaned up to attend these interviews, I think we would see a shift in our high homeless rates. Yeah,
that's a good point. I like hearing that. Again, I think this makes you a unique candidate, right? I mean, Yuri Bolin spoke a bit about homeless as well, but you have a different perspective because of your age.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned when you first walked in and we chit-chatted a bit, you played water polo.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so tell me about that.
I loved it. It's the only sport I've ever played, much to my dad's disappointment. He's a baseball, basketball guy.
Yeah.
But my parents had never heard of it. They're from the East Coast. So I, one summer, tried it out. The community pool was offering a class on it.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. I think I was in 7th or 8th grade. And I took a class on it over the summer. I fell in love. My freshman year, I was on the JV team. And then sophomore through senior year, I was on varsity.
Wow.
It was an amazing experience. I made some of the best friends that I have to this day. One of my teammates from high school and I still hang out on a regular basis. And it's just because you create kind of this bond through playing it's almost an intimate sport, because you're, only in a swimsuit and it's full contact.
Yeah.
So you have to have some level of care for your teammates, because even in practices, you're going to hurt each other.
Yeah.
And so it creates this like weird family dynamic. I was able to keep playing at Miramar College. And that was a great opportunity. Our team was kind of small, but it just made us closer friends.
Yeah.
But I love it. It's a weird sport for sure. It's very niche. You really won't see it outside of San Diego. But I love it so much.
Well, it probably kept you in fantastic shape.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It definitely kept me at some level of athleticism that I try to maintain.
Yeah.
But there's just nothing that's going to do the same to you as a 30-minute swim set.
Oh, yeah, no question.
Yeah.
But I think it's neat how you have teammates and those become lifelong friends and, really significant bonds, right?
Yeah, and it's just because, there's a lot of damage, I guess, that's dealt during games. And then when you get out of the pool, you want to make amend for it.
Right.
And that just results in really close friendships.
So I remember someone telling me that what occurs underneath the surface of the water can be pretty brutal.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
I've had broken noses. I've had concussions. I chipped my tooth during a game. I play kind of an aggressive position. I'm in what's called set guard, which is last line of defense before the cage.
Oh. So you got to be strong.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of kicking. There's a lot of headbutting that happens, at least in my position. Yeah. You'll have girls wrap their legs around you and pull you under, which if the refs catch it is technically offensive.
Yeah.
But the refs have to see it.
Yeah.
And
it's underneath the surface. So you can't see it.
That's kind of the cool thing is you can get away with a lot in water polo. That sounds awful. You can get away with a lot in water polo.
Well, every sport has their nuances, right?
Exactly.
So this is part of water polo.
Yeah, it's great. It's kind of a rush to be able to play something so full contact.
Yeah, nice. So, but you're pretty tall, right? So that probably helped you in that sport.
Yeah. It made it
because you have long arms, right? So you can block passes.
Yeah, and that's what made it easy. In my position, I kind of have to push the offensive player out And so having longer arms, I can push her further out without leaving my post too much. And my sibling was a goalie. We both played on the same team. And they were a goalie, and they're just as tall as me. And so their long arms made it very easy.
So what is your twin sister, right?
Sibling.
Excuse me, I'm getting confused here.
It's okay.
So what does your family think about you running for mayor?
My sibling is super supportive. They're my biggest fan. They're very enthusiastic. My parents, in the beginning, weren't sure if I was actually doing it. I told them that I wanted to run when I was a senior in high school. And they were like, okay, Emily, like, we'll see if it happens. And then when it got closer to the filing period and I made my appointment with Nancy Newfield and I got my paperwork and I turned in my paperwork and my parents were like, okay, this is happening. And they weren't sure whether they supported what I was doing, if they thought I was crazy or not. But now they're very supportive of it because it is so real that they're like, oh, like she's really serious. And I do have opinions about how I think local government should be. And they're realizing that I have genuine, strong opinions about these things. So they're very supportive now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times you run into people and they say, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And they never do it, right?
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people expect.
And you did it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're running. I mean, you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're exposed, right?
Yeah.
You know, so everything you say is on the record, and some people are going to love you and some people may not. And
yeah, which is scary because on some level I do want to be a 20-year-old. And I want to be able to go out with my friends and not feel like if I do something wrong, it's going to have these long-term consequences. You know, like I was joking with my friends. We went to Basement, which is a club in downtown San Diego, which is 18 and up. And we were going and they were joking about like Poway Mayoral candidate see you at a club.
Right.
But it's because I almost have to balance. There's almost like two aspects of my personality. And I'm a 20-year-old college graduate who wants to just be a 20-year-old. And I'm also a mayoral candidate who almost has a different persona. I put myself out there in a different way. I dress a different way. It's frustrating because I want to be able to be myself as a candidate. I want people to see who I really am, but I have to filter it in a way that's a little bit more easy to digest.
Well, yeah, that's, it is frustrating, right? Because, everyone always says, be yourself, right? But then when you be yourself, then some people kind of get rubbed the wrong way.
Yeah.
And that's why you see a lot of politicians kind of have a standard uniform, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, except Mayor Voss, he's got his own look. But generally speaking, there's a certain attire that you expect. So I get it.
To some level, I get worried about how I look compared to the other candidates. Not necessarily because of my age. I'm kind of past that. But I have tattoos. I have piercings. And they're in somewhat visible places. I have a big tattoo on my thigh where if I wear skirts, like people are going to see it. And I have a nose piercing, which is off-putting to some people because it's a facial piercing. And, when I decided I was going to run, I made this decision that I wasn't going to compromise so much of myself that I was going to lose sight of who I was. I wasn't going to take out my piercings. I wasn't going to cover my tattoos.
Good.
Because, those don't decide my qualifications for being mayor. My standpoints decide my qualifications. So I think I'm almost helping break a stigma of what a politician should look like.
Yeah.
Because people can have political views regardless of what they look like, regardless of gender, age, sexuality, tattoos or not. And so I think that by me looking how I look and not hiding who I am, it kind of breaks that mold that you see so often in politics.
That's why I'm so interested in having the podcast with you, because this is refreshing.
Yeah.
So, I know like people, how old am I? I'm 53. Okay. So I know people of my generation, for the longest time, tattoos were kind of, but like in the last, 25 years, everything's changed.
Yeah.
So now it's like I'm the one that doesn't have a tattoo.
Yeah,
It's
most
like
of my friends have at least one.
yeah. That's what my wife and I joke about that. Everyone under the age of 30 has at least one.
Yeah.
And so, that whole thing has changed.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of that in other segments of society. Things that were at one time taboo are now accepted.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not perfectly accepted, but we've come a long way.
Right. I think that's super important. Like you see, being a person of color is way more acceptable now than it was 50, 60 years ago.
Right.
Tattoos, dyed hair, piercings, being a member of the LGBT community, being a woman, all these stigmas that once it kind of existed are being broken down slowly but surely.
Right. That's great.
Yeah, it is. And it's refreshing.
So you said just a few moments ago that you had strong opinions about local politics.
Yeah.
So tell me some of the strong opinions that we haven't touched on yet that you want to share with us.
Mostly my opinions are around my kind of people who I feel I would represent. Mm-hmm. One of my strongest opinions, I guess.
No, by the way, strong opinions are good things.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I mean that in a good way.
Thank you.
Okay.
One of my strongest beliefs is that everyone needs to be represented. I grew up seeing a council of mostly white, mostly older men who live relatively in the same economic status.
Right.
And as a young woman of the LGBT community who lives in a almost lower economic status than those men, I was frustrated because people weren't representing me. And so one of my strongest views is that these people need to be represented. People who look like me, who feel like me, need to be represented. And it's unacceptable that we're not being represented because we have a different view on politics. I believe that we need to be more for community involvement. I think that there needs to be more Poway Days Parade-like activities. Mm-hmm. I think we need to encourage people knowing each other on a neighbor-to-neighbor basis. I really strongly believe that we need to start forming this community to be more what it started off as, which was almost a farm town. I had friends in elementary school who rode horses to school because that was an option. Right. And I think we need to go back to embracing almost that country charm that we had at one point, because we're not loving each other on a neighbor-to-neighbor basis anymore. We're becoming more and more polarized, and that's true with the rest of the country. Views are making us more and more polarized. My senior year of high school, there was a whole scandal with Confederate flags. And I
remember that.
Yeah, and it was hard because you saw this one group of people who thought they were being oppressed because they couldn't wave these flags, and then you saw another group of people who thought they were being oppressed because these flags were up. And nobody was taking the time to have representatives of each of these groups talk to each other. Right. We tried to deal with it quietly, we tried to deal with it quickly, and with as few consequences as possible. But, people still came out of that feeling upset and dissatisfied with how it was handled, because there's just this level of separation that everybody has from each other. I remember in high school slurs being thrown at me for people who I was dating, and that's unacceptable. And the fact that the city isn't fighting for more acceptance on those levels is exhausting to me. That we recently had, during Pride Month, the first exclusively LGBT kind of education event in the city of Poway. And it was hosted by a trans woman who lives here in Poway, and it was at the Poway Library. And it was basically having some young speakers come up and talk about their experience. And I think on those levels, community involvement like that would help kind of shorten that rift. I'm not asking for everyone to be down for the same things. I don't think that's reasonable. Everyone's going to have their opinions. Everyone's going to have their beliefs. I just expect on a neighbor basis to be kind, to respect each other. I have a friend who's been physically and verbally attacked on Poway Road because of how she looks. She's in the middle of her transition, and people don't like that. And it's frustrating because we are all neighbors. We are all a community. Mm-hmm. And we have to, on some level, respect each other.
Right.
So And I think that the city could be doing a better job of encouraging that level of acceptance and respect.
Interesting. What you're doing takes an incredible amount of guts.
Thank you.
I'm deadly serious about that. Not just as a young person, but as, LGBTQ, proud member.
Yeah.
I mean, you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
Poway, generally speaking, is thought of as a conservative city.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a lot of guts to do what you're doing.
It's hard because, you look at the statistics in Poway is majority conservative.
Mm-hmm.
We're one of the most conservative cities in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
But just because you have conservatives' beliefs, it doesn't mean you have to be disrespectful to people who have different beliefs than you.
Right.
So.
Well, again, I see some of this shift where conservatives, especially in California, mm-hmm. are becoming a lot more socially tolerant.
Yes.
Right. In other parts of the country, maybe not as much.
Yeah.
And to me, that's refreshing because it's sort of like, this notion of live and let live.
Yes.
Okay. I'm a big believer in the, this notion of, the preamble of the Declaration of Independence is like mm-hmm. my favorite thing. It's all men are created equal.
Yeah.
And they, have inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
And so a government, a society would have equality under the law and be tolerant of other people
right.
as long as no one else is being harmed.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so I'm seeing a lot of that. I mean, of course, there are exceptions, but even amongst, conservative, very religious families, that they're more accepting.
Yeah.
And isn't that good news, right?
Yeah, it's great news.
Mm-hmm.
When I originally was planning out my campaign, I wasn't planning on making my sexuality a big point on it. I wasn't planning on ever talking about it because looking at the demographics, I felt like it would be a mark against me more than anything else. But after talking to some other members of the community who are LGBT who live in Poway, I realized that I almost have to make it a public matter because I have to have people realize that we all look different. Not everyone's some sort of stereotype, and that we all deserve the same level of respect. I look and sound just like a heterosexual cisgender person would. And just because of who I love, I sometimes get treated differently.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's unacceptable. And so I think that on some level, me being open and proud about who I am has almost helped create this level of tolerance where people realize, oh, like she's okay. She's just some kid and she just wants to be able to get married.
Yeah. But the beauty of this is first of all, I applaud you for doing that.
Thanks.
You're not hiding it.
Right.
Okay. But you're not making a big deal out of it either. I mean, how long have we been talking now? For probably 45 minutes or something. I'm not even sure.
I don't know.
But it wasn't like the first thing out of your mouth.
No.
So, you're running for mayor because you believe in a lot of issues, right?
Right.
We've gone over them.
Yeah.
And, I think you're doing it the right way.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't think it should be a huge talking point. I don't think it should be a huge talking point for any candidate. We see this kind of resurgence of LGBT members becoming candidates for office or who are even taking seats of office. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you should vote for me or anybody else just because we're trans or lesbians, anything like that. Because I'm not just that label.
Of course.
Of course I go to Pride every year.
Yeah.
And I celebrate who I am and I love who I love. And that's a big part of my life, but who I marry, who I date, it's nobody else's business. And it doesn't have to be a big talking point for my candidacy when I have all these beliefs that pertain to everybody.
Right.
So I just think it's a side note that kind of helps LGBT people realize that we do have a voice.
Well, what's the thing they always say? America, right? America. Well, America is about freedom, right?
Exactly.
Okay, and so this is freedom.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Thank you.
What have we not covered? Do you think would be important for people to know about you and your candidacy? What do you like to do when you're not doing besides going to 18 plus clubs? What else do you enjoy doing?
I mean, I love my family. I spend a lot of time with my family. I enjoy going to the beach. I go to the dog beach. I try to go once a month to take my dog because he's ridiculous and loves the beach as well.
Tell me about your dog.
So I have a Great Dane German Shepherd mix.
Whoa, it's a big dog.
Yes, he's wonderful.
What's his name?
Yaz. He's named after a baseball player.
Carl Yastrzemski.
Yes.
So this is from your father, right?
Yes,
yeah, okay.
of course,
okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And he's great. He's, I think, 6 now. I got him my freshman year. He was my first dog. He's a big goofball, but such an important member of our family.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we definitely spoil him. He goes to the dog park every morning. He goes to the dog beach once a month. But I think that's part of having a dog is spoiling your dog.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time with my family. I spend a lot of time with my girlfriend. I try to make time with my friends, but it's hard when we're students or working or running a campaign.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So when I do have that kind of time, I try to spend it with people I care about.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Thanks.
How like is Yaz like could easily put his head onto this table?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So he's probably more Great Dane than he is German Shepherd, or
yeah, he just has German Shepherd coloring, and that's like pretty much it.
Oh, yeah.
He's great though.
That's awesome.
He's very I guess invasive because of how tall he is. He can really be anywhere people can be.
Yeah.
But that's part of his charm.
But Great Danes can be goofballs.
Oh.
Yeah, and so when he's at the dog beach, he's probably like all arms and elbows and everything else, right?
He doesn't know how to swim, but he can stand pretty far out in the water.
Yeah, he can. Yeah.
He has no idea how big he is because as soon as we get there, he runs straight for the smallest dog he sees, and doesn't understand why dogs or kids are afraid of him because he's the sweetest dog, but his size is very intimidating.
Yeah.
We have 2 kittens at home, and he loves them.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's just the greatest thing. He's the best dog I could have asked for.
That's great.
Yeah.
Does he like to play ball?
No. He likes
to frisbee or
he
anything?
likes to show you his tennis balls. Like he has them all over the house. He likes to bring them to you and show you, but he doesn't care if you throw them.
Okay.
He doesn't do fetch. He sometimes does like tug of war. He's mostly a lap dog, if I'm being honest, which is uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a big lap dog.
But he's very mellow when we're at home. But he's a sweet boy.
Well, his namesake was a good ball player.
Yes.
So he'd like to, I think Carl Yastrzemski, if I remember correctly, played left field for Boston up against the Green Monster. Yeah. So he's he was retrieving balls.
Yeah.
So that's great. You ever seen the comic strip Marmaduke?
Yeah.
So that's what I always think about when I think of Great Danes.
That's pretty much what he looks like.
Yeah.
Big like chest that kind of caves in.
Yeah.
Long legs. People always think he's a puppy because he still has big feet and big ears, but he's full grown. He's just kind of weird looking. We love him a lot.
Good. So what else?
I obviously don't have a lot of experience with politics. In high school, I helped revive the Gender Sexuality Alliance with the help of my sibling.
Oh, nice.
In college, I participated in the LGBTQX Alliance, which was a policy change group focused on creating a more diverse campus, a more accepting campus.
Okay.
Currently, I run a middle school support group for LGBT youth, and that's in Poway.
Middle school? Well, you came out in 8th grade.
Yeah, so a lot of us know, or at least have an idea of it before we even have a good idea of what gender or sexuality are. I've known since I was little. My first crush was on my Bible teacher, and she I will maintain she is the most beautiful woman I've ever met. I haven't seen her in years.
Love thy neighbor.
Exactly. But at some level from a young age. And so it's important that these young kids have an outlet, a safe place to attend where they can be accepted for who they are. My sibling runs the high school and older group. I think they age out at 21 is where you stop seeing people coming to that group. But it's so important that we kind of form this community, because a lot of these kids don't have their families accepting or their friends accepting. And so it's important that they see older LGBT members who are still like kicking it and doing fine.
Yeah.
So I mean, I love it. I've only been doing it for, I think, 2 months now. Allie, my sibling, has had their group for a few years.
Wow.
And it's great. It's great to see these young kids who are coming into themselves. It's great to kind of help them through just regular kid stuff, like asking people out and what do I wear to homecoming and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's great to kind of feel like you have that kind of impact on young people.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good. So you're connected to the community.
Yes.
You know, you're volunteering. You're an active participant in what our families and kids are doing in Poway.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
You know, and you're doing it from a different perspective.
Yes.
And that's what you bring. That's your uniqueness.
Yeah. I just want to have the opportunity for a different perspective to even be seen in Poway. Because you don't really see a different perspective. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of beliefs who don't really have the space to vocalize them. Mm-hmm. So I like bringing that to the table.
Okay, so people can rally behind you. They figure out no one's been able to represent me, and how about Emily Johnson?
Yeah,
right?
I kind of represent like the underdog.
Yeah, the underdog. I like that. Well, good. You know, I've been seeing your signs around town, and been seeing it at the forums, and I think your candidacy is just really interesting.
Thank you.
You know, because you're different.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, and I think that's refreshing in a town like Poway.
Yeah.
You know, where we kind of have, to a degree, kind of our old ways in Poway, right? And you're a change candidate. You're a refreshing perspective, right. a fresh face. Those are all good things.
Thank you. I think that's why a lot of people are rallying behind me, is because I'm a fresh face. Even if I don't represent their beliefs, they're excited to see someone new in politics.
Well, if you can figure out the secret sauce to get all the young people to vote, hey, then it's like a landslide, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, seriously.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, it is.
There's a lot of people that are under the age of 35 that just don't participate. But if they got organized, I mean, especially like in this 2018, it's a midterm election. You wouldn't take much.
There's a lot of change being shown. We have the opportunity to make a lot of things change in Poway, and it does come down to, are these young people going to vote? I'll yell at my friends all day, make sure you're voting. If you get your ballots in the mail, like you need to fill them out. You need to turn them in. Register to vote if you're not registered to vote. I think it might be too late to do that now, but I mean, I get kind of frustrated by some of my friends who are adamant against voting, and it comes down to a level of they don't feel like anything can change, especially after this past presidential election where the voters' votes didn't really make a difference because the electoral college made the decision.
Right.
And that was a different outcome.
Right.
And so, and for a lot of us, that was our first election. And so for us to see that happen as our first election, it kind of makes us feel like, well, what impact do we actually have? But on local level, we have all the impact.
Oh, yeah.
So
and there's no electoral college in Poway.
Right. Yeah. And so if you start at the local level and you vote these people up through the ranks, we can see some real big change on the national level. But you have to participate on starting at the local base.
Right.
So
that's good. Your first election being 2016. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like crazy. You know, the whole thing. I mean, it wasn't just the outcome of the election, but the whole process, the way everything unfolded with both parties and, and even some of the independent candidates. It was a crazy election.
Yeah. I mean, my parents told me you will never see an election like that before. You'll never see it again, probably. And
it was your first one. And so I can see how some young people are just discouraged.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But, at least for your friends, it matters to you. And hopefully they're rallying for you.
Yeah.
I
have a lot of support from people that I was close to in high school who text me, well, what can we do? I live in Boise, Idaho. What can I do? And I'm like, I don't know, post to social media about your support for me and mail in your ballot.
Yeah.
Because a lot of my friends are off to college and they can't be at the home base going door to door or phone banking for me. So
But what they can do is they can spread the word on
Yes.
social media,
exactly.
right? Because a lot of times when people choose to vote, a lot of it people are influenced by their friends and who they talk to. You know, I mean, the signs in the community are nice, but signs aren't going to probably sway a lot of voters.
Statistically, they don't do much.
Yeah, but they at least know that you're an active candidate.
Yes.
So if you can mobilize that social media army, you know,
Yeah.
kind of like how Bernie did,
Yeah.
you know, hey, you could be a surprise result here
Yeah.
in a few weeks.
And I really do think social media will be what makes or breaks my campaign. A lot of other candidates were asking me how I am campaigning just on a level of they wanted to help. And it really comes down to my biggest focus is social media, because that's how I'm going to reach the most people in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of money spent, least amount of effort exerted. I'm going to be able to reach at least 200, 300, 400 people who can then reach their own 200, 400, 300.
Right.
And it makes a crazy impact.
Yeah, it does.
So, and that goes for any candidate. You know, just because I'm young and tech savvy doesn't mean I have to be the only one doing this.
No.
You know, and you see Brian Edmonston, he's on social media a lot. Tori Powers uses it all the time.
Yeah.
Terry Norwood, and it's really changing their campaign game.
Oh, yeah, no question.
Like it makes it, social media makes it significantly easier to campaign. There's so much less restriction because it's such a new source. You know, there's all these rules on where you can put your campaign signs, for example. It's very restricted. There's a lot of regulation, and they can always be taken down. But social media, there's almost no rules. You know, you can ask for money through social media. You can ask for support, volunteers, anything. And because it's such a new source, there's no regulation, which is good and also bad. But
as a candidate, it's great.
yeah, exactly.
Right, because you have the flexibility, you know, you have the freedom, America, freedom. So you got the freedom
Yeah.
to implement your campaign the way you want.
Exactly.
And you can spread that network out, you know, and connect with your current friends, maybe your classmates you haven't seen in a few years, you know, and I bet a lot of people that maybe if they're in Idaho, maybe they're going to college out there, maybe they're still eligible to vote in town,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So if you can mobilize them, you know, watch out.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. It's really amazing.
That is so awesome.
Thank you.
Emily, this has been a great conversation. I've got to know a lot more about you,
I'm glad.
and I'm hoping that a lot of the viewers and listeners get to know more about you. But I just want to say good luck in your campaign.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this discussion. I think you're a very refreshing and interesting candidate. You're innovative. You got some ideas.
Yeah.
So, you know, go knock them dead, huh?
I hope so.
Okay, Emily Johnson, mayoral candidate
Yeah.
in the city of Poway. Thank you very much.
Thank you.